freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Then, President Bush addressed the nation. Today, a special edition of ELN Morning.
20 years ago, the world witnessed the tragic events of 9/11, and in the following days, a sense of unity filled the country.
And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Now we look at how ELN continues to remember one of the deadliest days in American history.
I got up thinking we have a special college coffee this morning to celebrate the opening of Rhodes Stadium.
Today, September 9th, 2021.
This is a special edition of ELN Morning, remembering 9/11 20 years later. Hello and welcome to this special edition of ELN Morning.
20 years ago, life in America changed. We remember those who lost their lives that day and continue to tell the stories of those impacted in 2001.
President Emeritus Leo Lambert was just over a year into his presidency when he was faced with his first significant crisis. On that day, Lambert was heading to college coffee, expecting a day of celebration when the news started coming in. Could you walk me through your morning on that day? You know, when you woke up, do you remember what was that day supposed to look like for you?
I got up thinking we have a special college coffee this morning to celebrate the opening of Rhodes Stadium. The football coach was going to speak, the marching band was going to be there. It was going to be just this big celebratory college coffee. And all of a sudden the news reports start coming in and we hear about a plane hitting one of the towers in New York, and thinking, boy, that's strange. What could have happened? It must have been a horrible accident.
ELN is pretty unique in the sense that for a southern school, we actually have a large population of students who are originally from up north, specifically areas that were impacted directly by 9/11. How did that sort of change or influence your plan when it came to deciding on how you guys were going to address the situation as it unfolded?
I just think we were just simply hyper aware of that fact, that this was not something that was 1,000 miles away that didn't really affect us, that this was touching families. It touched one family very directly. We lost one dad.
You mentioned a story at McKinnon Hall. Could you touch on that a little bit?
So the very first King Hussein scholar that we had at ELN was a young man by the name of Laith Majali from Jordan. He might have been the only Muslim student we had on campus at the time. And he's a first year. He's been on campus for what, 3 weeks? And he shows up at this event at McKinnon Hall where we have a panel of students speaking about how this has impacted them and how they're feeling about all of this. And Laith stands up in the back of the room, packed McKinnon Hall, and introduces himself. Hi, I'm Laith, I'm from Jordan. And he said, I just want to say that everything that you know about my country and the Middle East, you probably know from television. And everything that I know about America, I know from TV. And he said, we have to take time to get to know one another.
Did that change any sort of behavior post 9/11?
That was, I think, the beginnings of dialogues on campus about the importance of interfaith understanding, and that we needed to do more to be religiously diverse here at ELN.
For our full exclusive interview with Lambert, visit our website, elonnewsnetwork.com.
The university is commemorating the history of 9/11 with a series of events this week. ELN held a roundtable discussion Wednesday at the ELN Community Church, one of the first places where students and staff gathered after the attacks. One of the event panelists, Chaplain Emeritus Richard McBride, recalled a prayer that he recited to the community that day.
I've never been able to fully reconstruct the prayer, but I know that the spirit of it was, let us not be consumed by vengeance. For if we're consumed by vengeance, then we are in the same place as the terrorists.
There will be another panel taking place at the Corey Business Center today at 4:30 p.m. This special edition of ELN Morning will return in 60 seconds.
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He has the crazy strength to lift the man that raised him up without even flinching. This guy, no, this warrior, will always be by his father's side, even if his dad will hardly remember. If this guy isn't the toughest guy on the planet, then I don't know who is. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
As younger generations come to Elon, 9/11 is now a day that no one but faculty remember, and the memories have yet to fade for those teaching on campus that day. It is where I stand right now in Mosley Center that students gathered to call their families in New York City and D.C. following the September 11th attacks that happened 20 years ago. Dean of Students Janelyn Patterson says Elon formed a phone bank for students who did not have cell phones of their own and gathered in what is now a Razoo coffee shop to watch live news coverage.
I remember that from the corner of my eye, something caught the corner of my eye, and I turned around and looked, and those buildings had collapsed. And I said, are you all set? You know, before that, we were in response mode, but with that, it was just this incredulous feeling about this is huge forever.
Following the attacks, students and faculty gathered for a candlelight vigil and a national day of prayer to remember those who died. Professor of Religious Studies Toddy Peters, who was at Elon for just 2 weeks on September 11th, says teaching in a new place under the circumstances felt surreal.
Even the next day, I remember I went into class and I had my whole lesson plan that, we were supposed to do that day, but I said to my class, do you want to do class or do you want to talk about what's happened? And of course they wanted to talk about what had happened because it was just so overwhelming.
Patterson says after a long day of talking to students about the attacks, the reality set in when she went home to her husband and young son.
I can remember sitting on my couch and just crying. We put him to bed because I wanted to protect him from that. And it's just crying. My husband and I both just sitting there thinking, what does this mean for us and for our world? And are we going to have to be on edge every day?
Patterson says the attacks changed our campus and the world, and she mourns that current students will never know a pre-9/11 society. For Patterson and other Elon faculty members, Mosley Center is always a reminder of that day's events.
The financial district in New York City is just over 30 minutes from Middletown, New Jersey, where 37 of its residents didn't make the trip home 20 years ago. Elon senior Connor Cummins' father, who worked on the 102nd floor, happened to be out of the office that tragic Tuesday. He was one of 2 men that created the 9/11 Education Alliance, a charity that helps kids in New Jersey who lost their parents that day pay for their college expenses. Cummins' father and his co-worker founded the charity in 2002. Now Cummins works as junior vice president with his father and brothers.
We just try to spread awareness as much as possible by either having more donations possible, more fundraisers, and just keeping people informed and understanding of what happened and how tragic it was. Because I feel like there's some people who were like, oh, it just happened, I was 1 year old now. But it was obviously a very tragic thing that happened, and people need to be more aware of it and more understanding of how important it was to certain people.
9/11 Education Alliance has assisted nearly 90 students and families and has hosted 3 to 4 charity events per year over the past 2 decades.
Kind of nice to have that back feeling that I was doing the best I could to help out any way I could, and knowing that I have been luckier than other families to be in the position that I'm in.
For anyone interested in being a part of the 9/11 Education Alliance charity, you can reach out to Cummins directly at ccummins12@elon.edu.
What turned out to be a tragic day in American history was supposed to be a celebratory one for an Elon professor and his wife. Our Anne-Marie Bonner has the story.
We went from planning a nice anniversary dinner on that Tuesday evening to now I don't know where my wife is at this present moment. I don't know if she's in health and safety.
Annie Balderas was out for his daily morning jog without realizing he would soon lose contact with his wife on their second wedding anniversary. Joe Balderas was working for the news agency Reuters and was assigned to the U.S. Capitol building, where officials worried another plane would hit.
I was certainly running on adrenaline, and but then there was also the very real fear, not necessarily for my own personal safety, but just sort of fear of not really understanding what was happening and why this was happening.
Israel went to work at the Pentagon as a freelance journalist. While others were rushing to safety, he was rushing to report.
And while she is isolated and she's standing there by herself at the Capitol, I am surrounded by probably 300-400 journalists, reporters, military personnel, helicopters are landing right in front of us. I mean, it looked like a war zone.
Hours later, the two reunited in the Reuters newsroom to watch former President Bush address the nation. However, the events they experienced that day left a permanent mark.
I have this friend who gives us a card for every birthday and every wedding anniversary, and he has multiple times written, "Thank you for giving us something positive to focus on September 11th.
On a somber day for many, they aim to use their anniversary as a way to provide happiness. Anne-Marie Bonner, ELN Morning.
For more on this interview, visit elonnewsnetwork.com, and we'll have more stories for you right after this.
Hi! You think you're probably sober?
Yeah.
But you're thinking about taking the back roads home, just in case. If you're probably sober, then why would you do that? Good choice.
Probably okay isn't okay. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
That's a full glass of wine. I'll be chatting you later.
Alumna Kristin Hansen was only 2 weeks into her first semester at ELN in 2001 when she watched history change course with classmates she barely knew. She says the days following 9/11 felt oddly normal.
That day we all felt that our world was going to change day to day so much, and to look back and realize 20 years later, aside from the airport and a whole other conversation about, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the day-to-day life of a college student and a college graduate in America really didn't change all that much.
Originally from Northern Virginia, Hansen says that it was the ELN community that convinced her to stay on campus.
For me, someone who was already feeling a little bit homesick, already feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, to be in a community like that, at a time like that, away from home, really for the first time, I might have been one of those people that ran home, the following weekend and never came back if that community was not there, for me.
Hansen says her religion class had a discussion centered around learning about Islam that afternoon. She encourages all ELN students to learn more about the religion and separate the events of that day from the religion itself. That is all the news we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us in this special edition of ELN Morning.
For full interviews from the stories you saw today, be sure to go to our website, elonnewsnetwork.com.
And follow us on social media at ELN News Network.
Have a great Thursday, ELN.